Isabel, lots to get through. Let's just talk about why Labour seems so reticent, frankly, to do anything. It's all very well for the Prime Minister to say, people don't want an inquiry, they want action. What action? I'll tell you what Labour want. They want no action and no inquiry. And I'll tell you why. You know why. First of all, probably first and foremost, such an inquiry would be rather embarrassing for the man who was Director of Public Prosecutions from 2008 until 2013, when all this grooming gang rape horror was going on. That was a certain Mr. Keir Starmer. Now, he's been boasting. He's actually been boasting. I was the man who green-lighted prosecutions for the grooming gang members. He did that in 2013, just as he was leaving. So from the J report in 2014, it revealed that grooming gang rapes, mass rapes, have been going on for at least 16 years. So that comes way into Starmer's tenure. They knew this was going on. He would then argue, well, I didn't find out until 2013. Well, that can't be the case, because in 2011, the Times newspaper splashed it all over the front page, big scandal story, everybody knew about it. Now, during the Director of Public Prosecutions of the time, Keir Starmer's tenure, no one was prosecuted. No one. For what was going on. Why didn't he do something in 2011? Frankly, why didn't he do something a lot longer before that? Because everybody knew this was going on. So the reason Labour are very reticent about this whole issue, would love it to go away, is because it could be a real can of worms for this Prime Minister. And secondly, by the way, it's all to do with that old cynical business of political mathematics. Labour are going to rely on the Muslim vote at the next election. They need it, and such an inquiry would alienate the Muslim vote. By the way, Home Office Minister Jess Phillips, that great woman who really cares about vulnerable children, who cares about them so much, she blocked an inquiry into their ordeal. She personally utterly relies on the Muslim vote in her constituency. She doesn't want to upset her Muslim mates in her constituency. So it comes down to craven mathematics and a desire to protect their hopeless boss, Keir Starmer. That would be my assessment. Would you agree?
Well, Sir Keir Starmer does appear to be particularly rattled about this, doesn't he? I mean, why else would he resort to his usual reflex slur, which is to say that anyone who wants to call for an inquiry must be in some way far right? You know, we know this is what he says when his back's against the wall. As always, it totally alienates probably millions of good people, millions of good apolitical people who are not far left, middle or right. They just want to see what the rest of us want to see, which is answers and justice for what happened. So I think that Keir Starmer is very frightened for his political future. I think he's extremely exposed on this. He knows that. It has trouble written all over it for him. And he just wants, as far as he's concerned, the way he sees it, he just wants this damn thing to go away. It's far too risky for him. And I think that were there to be a comprehensive inquiry of the type that you and I would be nervous about, because it would just take for absolutely ever, we would soon discover that there are potentially dozens of other towns in which this was taking place, this type of thing, and that there were many Labour councillors who were in some way complicit or negligent or in some way failed in their duty of care, whether it's Labour councillors or other political figures who support the Labour Party. So all of this is amazingly awkward for this government, and that's why they're running scared. And it raises so many questions. You know, there was a point I wanted to make before the break about this ghastly Pakistani who we supposedly can't deport. Well, 2 points I want to make. Number one, send him back to Pakistan. However we do it, let's just send him back there. Number two, I bet you anything that this individual, this excuse for a man, is currently living in some way on benefits. If he's not, then he should come on this programme and tell us he's contributing to society. But I virtually guarantee you that this guy and his family are being supported by the British state. That means you and me and our listeners, the British taxpayer. That is grotesque. If we can't deport the guy, then let's cut every single one of his benefits.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to play a little clip of Kemi Badenoch in Prime Minister's Question Times today, where she points out one of Labour's arguments, we don't need another inquiry. There's been an inquiry. 2008, 2014, sorry, the J report. Now, that was an inquiry into child sex abuse. It was not an inquiry into grooming gangs, into the scandal of grooming gangs, of rape gangs. It was not an inquiry into that. So we have not had an inquiry into what we're talking about. And as Kemi Badenoch quite rightly points out, in the J report, to prove just how much it didn't touch on grooming gangs, in Rotherham, there was one, in the 468-page report, one mention of Rotherham. In Rotherham alone, there were 1,400 grooming gang victims. So we haven't had an inquiry into the grooming gangs. Let's listen to Kemi confronting Keir on this issue today.
The new year has started with a focus on the decades-long rape gang scandal. Across the country, thousands of girls were tortured and sexually abused at the hands of men who treated them as things to be used and disposed of, destroying many lives forever. The Prime Minister has mentioned previous inquiries. He is right. There has been an inquiry into child sexual abuse, but it wasn't about the rape gang scandal. In its 468 pages, it mentioned Rotherham just once. Is the Prime Minister confident that we know the full extent of rape gang activity?
So, I mean, she's hit the nail on the head there, Isabel. It's not good enough to say we've already had an inquiry, because we haven't. So when Starmer says what people want is action, I want to know what he means by that. Because so far we are just lost in words here. And can I also get your reaction? We're going to play that well-known shot now, the one well-known clip now of Starmer calling us all far right if we want an inquiry. But every person in this country who feels there should be justice for some of these girls with an inquiry, he had the absolute effrontery to call far right. Now, we've learnt today, you'll be interested to hear, that in 2018, David Lammy, the current Foreign Secretary, the joke of a Foreign Secretary, tweeted that it was racist to focus on the ethnicity of the grooming gangs. I mean, you know, do you see a theme coming up here? Now, let's remind ourselves of Keir's outrageous statement, which I think is the big mistake of his mistake-ridden career. Let's remind ourselves of the outrageous statement, the outrageous slur he made against people who feel there should be an inquiry.
Those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. And those attacking Jess Phillips, who I'm proud to call a colleague and a friend, not protecting victims. Jess Phillips has done 1,000 times more than they've even dreamt about when it comes to protecting victims of sexual abuse throughout her entire career. What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon simply to get attention, when those politicians sat in government for 14 long years, tweeting, talking, but not doing anything about it. Now so desperate for attention that they're amplifying what the far right is saying. So that's what I say about Jess Phillips. Thank you.
The thing about this, Isabel, as I say, I think that is the worst mistake he's made, for which he will never be forgiven. Decent people all over the country just thinking, well, yeah, an inquiry. These girls deserve justice. He says, oh, you're far right. You're Adolf Hitler. You're a lunatic. Lammy said it years ago. Now, apart from the fact that's ludicrous, insulting and ridiculous for him to say that. It proves that he hasn't learnt from the problem. The reason these girls were abandoned was because the authorities, those in positions of authority, were terrified of being called racist, and therefore they felt that to actually go after these Pakistani guys would somehow be right-wing and racist. He still has the same attitude. He still thinks that if you feel that these Pakistani predators should have the book thrown at them, that we should go after the people who turned their blind eye to the grooming gang scandal, he still thinks that's right-wing and racist. He still doesn't understand the problem. It's unbelievable.
It literally beggars belief that this man who leads our country should be so out of touch with how the people that he is supposed to represent feel. You know, I am rarely really triggered by politicians. You know, I spend all my time listening to their verbiage, but that comment actually really gets me because it is so insulting to voters. It's so insulting to all those children who were abused. And it shows that we have somebody at the helm of our country who is unfit for office. I very, very rarely have said that about any Prime Minister. I've only ever said that, I believe, about Boris Johnson on account of his lying. I now believe that Keir Starmer is unfit to be Prime Minister because he simply cannot judge things right. He makes time and again precisely the wrong call. And that summed it up, as you said, the mistake of his career. But, you know, Kev, there'll be another colossal mistake next week. And all those politicians and all of those on the left who cried racism at anyone who made the obvious observation about the ethnicity of the majority of these perpetrators is part of the problem. That makes David Lammy squarely part of the problem that led to this colossal scale abuse. And for that, he should be thoroughly, thoroughly ashamed.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more.